The story of Big 12 actually started during the 2021 season. At the time, he was a 2.5-year-old deer. He wasn't a big deer on our radar. I just logged his trail camera photos and went about my business. However, things changed last year. During the 2022 season, he actually increased quite a bit on the antler front and grew into probably a 140-inch deer, already at 6x6 as a 3.5-year-old deer, split G4s, just showed a lot of promise. So I actually got with some of the other people that I hunt with, some of the neighbors, and we all agreed to pass this deer to let him grow, hopefully to reach his full potential. Skip ahead to 2023. I didn't get my trail cameras out until probably around the beginning of August. Work and life got in the way, and I just didn't have time to get out there and post those centuries. But eventually I did, and within a few days, this deer showed up. And so I decided to try to target this deer based on the historical knowledge of what I knew. Even though he was bedding on our property, it was not going to be easy because this deer was so sporadic and so almost arbitrary in his movements. But as I continued to study some of the past trail camera photos I had of this deer from previous seasons, as well as what little info I had, I started to realize that this deer was selecting bedding areas based on wind direction. He was also deciding which direction to go in and feed, which direction, which destination, food source he would target of an afternoon and night based on wind direction as well. And so whenever I started piecing that together, and looking back at historical weather data, I started to realize what winds he preferred to go in the direction that I could hunt this deer. Because he was bedding up in the corner of the property, and if he went in other directions, he wasn't in play for me because he was going directly over onto neighboring properties. But when he came in my direction toward the center of our property, he was in play. Unfortunately, the wind was in his favor to do that. So we call that a just off wind. When you're hunting a just off wind, the wind is technically in the favor of that particular deer. But if you know how to use that and manipulate that to your advantage, and you set just off enough and the wind is just off enough, you can actually have that wind mostly in the deer's favor, but just enough in yours that that deer feels comfortable moving during daylight. That was my card to play. And so I ended up hunting this deer only 3 times over the course of the first week and a half of deer season. On September the 8th, I did not see that deer as I expected to. I was set up in the spot that I thought I could target this deer. I had hung or repositioned 5 or 6 tree stands in this core area, but this is the only spot that I really felt comfortable with and thought that I had an actual legitimate opportunity at intercepting this deer. And so I was set up basically in a staging area. It's Kentucky, so I can feed corn here. I was using this corn pile as a staging area. As the deer come down out of the bedding area, they would hit that corn pile. And so it was just kind of where it kind of tapered down. It was kind of a natural pinch point anyway, and the deer kind of funneled down off the hilltop down into that pinch, come through that staging area, and then go on out into the soybean fields behind me. And I knew that this deer he did not like moving in daylight. All summer long, I did not get one bit of velvet footage or sightings, preseason sighting of this deer despite my efforts. So I knew that I had to intercept this deer in the timber where he was more comfortable moving during legal shooting hours, because he wasn't oftentimes making it out into the big fields in daylight. So I set up just inside the timber, and on September the 8th, that Friday, the first Friday of the season, he did not show up in that staging area. As the final seconds of legal shooting light ticked away, I stood up and started packing my gear, turned around and looked out into the soybeans, and there he was right there, about 30 yards away. Unfortunately, legal light was over, could not shoot him, and so I had to watch him go down into the beans. Fast forward to September 12th. It was a Tuesday, and that's when things actually came together. We had a pretty good wind for this deer to move through there. It wasn't perfect for him, but long story short, it was a cool down. We had some cloud cover. Clouds eventually burned off and the sun shone through, but we still had that temperature drop and the wind that he liked. So I decided to try it. That afternoon, the deer started moving incredibly early, and then so did he. He moved probably the earliest or second earliest afternoon movement that I had seen all season. He come down out of the bedding area. I had seen a bunch of other deer already, and I saw his rack coming through the cedars.
Right there he is. Right there he is, about 50 yards, 55, 60 yards in the timber. Coming this way.
And whenever I looked and I saw his rack bobbing through the branches, that's when things started to get real. And as he come down through there out of the timber on pins and needles, as deer commonly do when you're hunting a big mature deer, let alone how they act whenever they're around a corn pile, which is amplified, it was just surreal. Watching him come down out of there, seeing how he behaved, watching his movements, his behavior, it was just incredible. I finally got the shot opportunity that I was looking for, and fortunately made a pretty good hit on the deer.
Pretty much midnight. Shot the deer this afternoon at 6:30, and looked like the hit was a little bit back, a little bit low, but at least a little bit low, if not back. And it also looked like the arrow deflected downward on exit. And so I felt like it was probably a dead deer. Of course, I did what everybody does and started texting buddies and calling buddies and sending screenshots and trying to figure out, you know, if the deer is dead or not. Anyway, we've given the deer about almost 6 hours, about 5.5 hours, and we're gonna hopefully go in here and find this deer. Oh my goodness.
We found the buck within 5 minutes and 70 yards of distance. He had died well before I ever climbed down out of the stand, and so I was relieved to know that it was a clean, ethical hit.
But everything I had to hold it together for the shot, and it was a little bit better than I thought it was.
All over. All the way up on the face.
Yeah.
HuntStand offers multiple subscription levels. HuntStand Pro is great. HuntStand Pro Whitetail is even better. One of the tools that comes with it is the Whitetail Forecast, and it shows you a breakdown of the expected movement for that day and the hunts to come in the near future. This particular day had high odds of seeing deer movement, and the Whitetail Forecast showed it. It predicted it. So this Whitetail Forecast ended up showing me how good of a day it could be and the potential in that afternoon sit. And of course, whenever I actually got out there and this deer moved an hour before dark, I knew that it had been correct. And so while the story for this deer right there, while that one has come to an end and I hope that you have enjoyed, just know that that's not the last story. This is a brand new series that we're covering here, that we're presenting to you. And it's the first of many great adventures that we are going to share. And so we thank you for being with us here. We thank you for seeing what we got to see and sharing that adventure with us. And we hope you'll come back and do it again next time.